Welcome to the Daily Tanya. Today is Wednesday, the third day of Menachem. Let's begin with tzedakah. Gedola tzedakah shemekareves esageula. Tzedakah brings Mashiach closer. And we start today chapter 11 in Igeret Hateshuva. In the last chapter, the Alter Rebbe discussed, he brought down two statements from our sages regarding prayer that seem to be contradicting. One place it says, you do not pray unless you prepare yourself with seriousness, with feeling of remorse and contrite of heart about sins and so on. Got to get yourself ready, seriously, before you pray. And then there's another statement that it says, you do not start praying unless you are in a happy mode. Only through happiness you can start praying. So which one is it? Alter Rebbe explained that this is the two levels of Tshuva Tata and Tshuva Ilah. Tshuva Tata is about fixing what was done through sins and repairing all the damages. Teshuva Ilah, the higher level of Teshuva, is returning to Hashem and getting closer to Hashem through Torah, through mitzvahs, becoming one with God. And that is something that is done with Simcha. So really we need both. In order to get the Teshuva Ilah, you have to cleanse yourself from all the problems first. However, so you need both, but being that we are not capable of containing two such extreme opposite emotions simultaneously, so the suggestion the Alter Rebbe said was to separate it, to have the remorse and the tshuva tata to be done at night, whether it is in the time where they say the tikkun chatzas, the midnight prayer for the destruction of the temple, that we said that these days we don't do this, not too many people do it these days, and or at least he said once a week, and Friday before Shabbos, Thursday night you do it, and then when it comes in the morning, you get ready with simcha, with happiness. And this chapter, the Alter Rebbe continues to say that really it is possible to have both opposite emotions simultaneously. And it says that is a possibility. And indeed we do find, he brings an example from Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, when he revealed to his son, Rabbi Elazar, he revealed to him secrets about the Holy Temple. So he felt simultaneously two opposite feelings. One was the feeling of feelings, the sorrow for the destruction of the temple. Because now that he realized how important, when he found out all the mystical things about the Holy Temple, he felt the sorrow of having lost such a temple. But in the same time, he felt happy and joyful in the fact that his father revealed to him such great secrets of the Torah. So the same thing here, the Alter Rebbe says, we are able to have these two simultaneous feelings. So the question is, but we just said that we cannot have it. So how can we say now that we can have it? The Rebbe explains that really the Alter Rebbe was talking about two types of people. If we're talking about the Beinani, person is a Beinani, is the intermediate person, is a person that is in full control of his Yetzer Hara, of his acts, of his thoughts, of his speech. He doesn't commit any sins. He can have both feelings, the feeling of sorrow, the feeling of the bitterness, and the feeling of happiness and joy. You may ask, what kind of feeling of bitterness the person like that has? He doesn't do any sins. But the feeling of bitterness is the very fact that he has potential to sin. that he has such a yetzer hara, an evil inclination, that it tries to separate him from Hashem. So that feeling can be both also, in the simultaneously. But in any case, what we're saying over here, that we have two separate times, is when we're talking about a person who needs really to regret about his past. If he's gonna come all of a sudden and have the feeling of joy that everything is okay, he's not going to be able to have the proper remorse, the sincere remorse for the past. So that cannot really be done simultaneously. Nevertheless, the Alter Rebbe says that even a person who did commit sins, who is not a Beinoni yet, but he's working on it, he also can feel simultaneously the joy, even while he's asking for Hashem. Why? Because he's so certain that God forgives. That itself brings the person into joy. So let's see how the Alter Rebbe explains it inside chapter 11, Igeret Hateshuva. As the Alter Rebbe, "V'omnam li is belibo yachno, hi b'chinas tshuva tata kanizka le'ein." This subject, simultaneously harboring contrite humility in the heart, the state of teshuva tata, the lower level teshuva, as explained, vegam asimcha b'Hashem shteim b'yachad, and the above mentioned contrary emotion of joy in God, that is also necessary for the service of prayer. Says the Alter Rebbe, it is possible to have them both simultaneously. This has already been discussed in Likutei Amorim, the first part of the Tanya, at the end of chapter 34. This is as stated in the Zohar, the Holy Zohar. It says, weeping is lodged in one side of my heart, and the joy is lodged in the other side of my heart. This is in the story of the son of Rabbi Shlomo Zalman Cohen, as I just explained. That's number one. Now you can have both. And then again, this is especially when we're talking about a Beinoni, who doesn't need to have a remorse for sins because he didn't sin. So his bitterness is for the very fact that he has an animal soul. But in the same time, joy that he has the neshama, the godly soul. However, even if a person did commit sins, he also can have these two simultaneously these two opposite emotions. Why? Because he can be certain that Hashem forgives. How can we be certain? The Alter Rebbe will explain. Ubetziruf oida emuna v'abitochen liyisnochen libe batuach b'Hashem ki chofetz chesed. Joined to this is the faith and confidence, the heart being firm and certain in God that He delights in kindness. V'chanun v'rachum v'rav l'sloyach, and He is gracious and merciful and abundantly forgiving. The instant one entreats Him for forgiveness and atonement. As soon as a person asks sincerely from Hashem forgiveness and atonement, Hashem right away forgives. As it is written, in accordance with your abounding compassion, erase my transgressions. Kapseini tahareni. Or in another verse we say, cleanse me, purify me. And erase all my sins. And this is true, and it is absolutely certain without any doubts that Hashem forgives. Bli shum safek or sfeik ba'olam, the worshipper offers supplications such as the above without the faintest vestige of doubt. Don't have any vestige of doubt that Hashem forgives. How do we know that? Says the Alter Rebbe, that is because our sages established that we should say the bracha, the blessing, thanking Hashem, who is gracious and pardons abundantly. Now, when you say a blessing, you can only say a blessing if you're certain that the blessing is valid. If there's a question whether this something is happening or not, you're not allowed to say a blessing if there's in doubt. You're not allowed to use God's name in vain. If we would not be certain that God forgives, we would not be allowed to use God's name in vain, saying, "Blessed are you, Hashem, for forgiving." So if we do say so, that means that this is a certainty that God forgives. For this reason, in every Shemona Esrei, the Amidah prayer, the moment we plead, pardon us, we conclude, "Blessed are you, O God, gracious one, who pardons abundantly." Now, we are forbidden to recite the blessing of doubtful obligation for fear that it be pronounced in vain. Thus, were there even the slightest doubt as to whether God forgives the sinner, we would never have been commanded to recite the above blessing. And the fact that we do, that means that there is no doubt at all that Hashem forgives. However, there is no doubt here whatsoever. For we have asked, pardon us, forgive us. Furthermore, were we not to repeat our transgressions, we would be immediately redeemed. In accordance with the blessing that we recite immediately afterwards, "Blessed are you, O God, who redeemed Israel." As the order of blessings indicate, forgiveness leads to redemption, if not for our relapses. Now, the Rebbe goes on to say, another thing, another proof that Hashem forgives is because from the fact that Hashem expects from us to forgive others as well. If we humans, who are so limited in our patience, limited in our capability of forgiving, yet we are expected to forgive, we are instructed to forgive, and certainly Hashem tells whatever He commands us to do, Hashem does Himself, and Hashem is not limited in the ability of forgiving. This is what Alter Rebbe goes on, "V'afilu b'midas basav adam kain, shetzorich adam limchel teikef umiyad shemevakshim mimenu mechila." Even by human standards, this certainty of pardon is legitimate. Why? For one must forgive as soon as he is asked for pardon. He must not cruelly withhold his forgiveness. And that is true even in the most extreme cases. As the Talmud says, even if a person cuts off somebody else's hand, and then he regrets and he remorses and he asks forgiveness, you should forgive him. Even if one were to cut off his hand. It's something that cannot be healed, cannot be fixed. As we find in the Gemara, the Talmud, at the end of chapter 8 of Baba Kama. So too, if one has asked his fellow for forgiveness 3 times and has been rebuffed, he needs not apologize further. He asks 3 times, the other person doesn't forgive, then it's his problem, not yours. Another example the Alter Rebbe brings from the Gibeonites. The Gibeonites were the people who Shaul killed some of them, and later on King David came and asked forgiveness, and they refused to forgive. And because they refused to forgive, King David decreed that they should not be able to join the Jewish people, because a Jew, one of the natures, the signs of a Jew is that he's compassionate. And if they're not able to forgive, that means they're not Jewish. They're not capable of joining the Jewish people. When King David asked the Gibeonites to forgive King Saul, who had killed their people, and they refused to do so, David decreed that they should not enter the congregation of God, meaning they would never be allowed to convert and thereby join the Jewish people. Why? Who are merciful. The Jewish people are merciful. As we have learned in Yevamos, end of chapter 8. So if that is true, that is expected from human beings, certainly Hashem, who is unlimited, his forgiveness is also unlimited. As a divine trait, how much more certain is it, nay, infinitely more certain, that forgiveness is swift, that Hashem forgives constantly. And it doesn't mean that we should not take the sin seriously because Hashem is forgiving. And it's not that Hashem is not considering the acts as serious acts, because by Hashem everything has to be perfect. And even the slightest transgression causes effect in the neshama. But at the same time, as soon as a person truly asks for forgiveness and he has that change of heart, Hashem is completely forgiving. So this is the end of today's share. That's Hashem. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a wonderful day.